in this video, what I want to do is I want to go over a take-home test that I recently had to do for an iOS interview. I ended up getting the interview, went really well. So I guess the take-home test was, successful. So I thought maybe it might be worth it to make a video on it. So what I want to do is I want to run through the app, kind of like the functionality of it. It's all pretty, straightforward. And then we're going to go through the code, but just on like a high level, right? So it's not really a tutorial. Like I'm not going to show you how to do the things, but you can see the code kind of like, like line by line, to see what's going on there. And, yeah, we'll go from there. And I'll also, I'll have a link to the GitHub in case you want to, take any pieces of it and use it for your own take homes. Because I think, I've had to do probably like a few of them in the past like 5 years or so. So I guess it's a more common practice now. All right, so let's get into it. All right, as you can see, it's right above my head. The whole point of this app was basically three things, right? You have a login screen, which you can see there. They gave me a model, a 3D model, right? And they said, we want you to have a login screen, which logs into sort of like a grid screen, which would be kind of a grid full of buttons. And then you choose a button and it would take you to like kind of a detail screen where you'll be able to, display this 3D model and be able to like rotate it, zoom in and out, and that's kind of basically it, right? Then you can log out, log back in, so that's kind of that was the whole point of the app. So let's just run through the app real quick, just to see the functionality, and then we'll dive into the code after, right? So here we go. So famous robots, we got the SF symbol up there for it's like a logo of science, I don't know. And then you have to enter your email and your password. So let's say you just put anything here for your email. Password can be anything. That's just the way I had it for ease of use. So you can see there's like a little eye icon there with a slash, meaning it's a secure field, right? You can uncheck it. Now you can see the password. Hit it again, obviously it becomes secure. And then you hit login and you get this error, right? Please enter a valid email and or password. Password can be anything. There's your hint. So basically all you got to do here is it's saying, this, whatever I typed in here is not a valid email, right? So that's easy. All we got to do is say whatever that is at, let's say, david.com. And now we can log in. So that worked. So here's the grid screen I was talking about. You got your title there, famous robots. You got your logout button at the toolbar. And now we have, a grid of famous robots, right? We got the Terminator, two Terminators, C-3PO, R2-D2, Megatron, all the good stuff. So let's just click on one, T800, and boom. Now you can see our 3D model. So this is the model they actually gave to me to use, right? Then it's got your title, which is the T800, and then you have a description. He's the Terminator. What else can you say? I don't know. He's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, perhaps. So let's click another one, C-3PO, right? We all know who that is. So you can see the model is exactly the same, and that's because they only gave me one 3D model to use, right? But they still wanted a grid. So what are you going to do? You use the same model for each item in the grid, right? Typically, you would pull a bunch of different ones from a database, use an API, and get, all the correct data. But since we only have one, we basically just had to recycle that one for each button, right? And as you can see, you can kind of spin it around. And so this is the iOS simulator. So you can't really touch the screen, obviously, but if you use the options, you can kind of, there you go. Well, we don't need to see that area of the robot, but, you can see what's going on there, right? So that's basically the whole app, and you can log out here, and then we're back to the first screen. And that's the functionality. That's what they asked for, and that's what I turned in. And okay, so what we're going to do now is go into the code. like I said, we're going to do a high level sort of review of it. It's not going to be like any in-depth explanations. I just want to show you kind of how each screen is built and how we go from screen to screen. It's all going to be done in Swift UI. It's getting more popular now, especially in the last 5 years or so. More companies are using it, so it pays to learn. I would say that's for sure, and it's a much nicer and I'm not going to say easier way, but it's a nicer way to make your apps. But there's obviously debates about that. But we're not going to do that here. All right, so here is the login view, which is the login screen, which you see to the right of it. First things first, we're using a login view model, which if you don't know what that is, it's basically a class that's going to have your data that you're going to use for your login view, right? So let's check out that view model real quick, just so you know what's going on once we get to the login screen. So we're starting out with an email and a password, which are both strings, obviously. We have a computer property here called isValidEmail. It's got a property called email regex. So regex is a regular expression. I don't know if anyone else calls it regex. I do, because it sounds like you're rejected, but that's fine. Regular expression. So basically you can use that to see if an email is valid, right? So if it's like a@b, a@b.com, right? So just so it follows the regular email format. So this string will do that for you. You can find that anywhere online. It's very easy. And then you can set up your test, right? So you're going to do NS predicate, matches, and then you're going to pass in your email regex here. You're going to do your test based on that, evaluate true or false. Then we have another computer property called login disabled, basically just checking if the email field is empty or the password field is empty. This we're going to use later. It's a class called authentication, where we're basically just toggling this variable is validated, right? You'll see that later on. We're going to do some checks, and based on that, we're going to validate whether the login is correct or not. So let's go back to the login view. All right, so moving on. So now we have a show alert, which you saw before when we tried to log in. We have our authentication. We have our focus state. Focus state, something in Swift UI where basically you can kind of just, control where the cursor goes, right? That's kind of the short version of that. You can see our image is bonjour. That's FS symbol, which is the science symbol, I like to say. Famous robots is our text. Our text field for email is right there. We're using our email property here from the login view, you can see. Then you have here, so these are modifiers that are good for email, like keyboard type, auto capitalization, none. Text content type, email address, very helpful. And on submit, we're going to change the focus to password. And that's just an enum we have down at the bottom. We have focusable field, email, and password, right? And that's just going to take us to the field that we need to be at, right? Because you can see we have focused here equals dot email, and then this one is saying, right, change it to password, which you're going to see down here. And the password field is a bit of a custom field because we're toggling between a secure field and a text field, right? So let's just go down to the password field real quick. There we go. Again, it's a custom view, right, where we have a binding of a password, we have a title, and here is where the action takes place, where if password is hidden, it's going to be a secure field, right? That's the one that has the dots on it, and then otherwise it's going to be a text field. And how are we toggling that? We're using the I SF symbol over here, right? So we're either going to have it as I/, depending on password hidden, or we're going to have it as I. And that's how we achieve that lovely effect. And wonderful. And then after we submit the password field, or we press the login button, which is down there, we're going to have the same logic as we're going to validate well, authentication validate, right? So what are we doing? We're going to make sure the email is valid and that the login is not disabled, right? Then we're going to update the validation, which is going to toggle our is validated variable. And what that is going to do is we're going to go to our app file, right? And we're going to say, great, if the authentication is validated, now we're going to move on to our grid view, right? Else we're at the login view. So this is going to happen. This is true. And we're going to move on to our grid view after this. And great. So what do we have here? Let's just move forward so we can get there. a@b.com, and then password can be anything, and boom. So let's get into here. We have our grid view, which we have our grid view model, right? Let's take a look at that real quick. So this is pretty straightforward, right? This is basically an array of robot model, which is what we saw earlier. It's got an ID, name, a title, a file name, and a description. So the file name, which is this file, this is a robot.usdz file. That's what I got from the company to use as the model. And how that works is pretty straightforward as well. You basically just add it to your bundle, right? So you can see if you go to like the project on the left over here, you could see there's copy bundle resources, and the top one there says robot.usdz. That's probably too small for anyone to look at, but that's basically what you do. And it's imported using SceneKit, and then it gives you this little, this little scene here, I guess you might call it. But that's fairly straightforward to do. You can look it up online, like what the steps are. It's not that complicated. And then after that, basically what you do is in grid view, you're gonna want to import SceneKit, right? This way that we can actually display the model. Okay, so let's just move through this. This is all pretty straightforward stuff. We have columns, which is an array of grid items. We have 3 grid items representing a column. So as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The body itself is, it's going to be a navigation stack with a scroll view, lazy V grid, and here we have our array of robots with a navigation link, which is going to navigate to our description view that's actually going to show the model itself. So let's look at that now. So as you can see, here is where we do the actual navigation. It's our detail view, which is right here. Now you could like refactor this, restructure it. You could have all your views in different files. You can do all that. But for this occasion, it's a take-home project. You only have like a limited time to do it. I don't think there's any harm in just putting a small view below, our main kind of view, right? So the detail view is just right below it. We're passing it a robot. Here's the body. So here we go. So scene view, right? This is what comes from SceneKit. So this is what we're using to actually, display the 3D model. And the main thing here is we're passing in this SCN scene, right? And here's the robot.file name, which is that USDZ file. I think it's called USDZ. The USDZ file that we have. So again, if we had like real data, right? Because we're looping through this array, we would have, a different file for every robot, right? But since it's all the same, it's just the same file name. It's the same model getting displayed, obviously, right? So that's how scene view works. It's pretty straightforward stuff. And what you have here is you also have other, the options parameter. You can add other properties like, here we go, allows camera control. So we can do the zoom in, zoom out, spin things around, default lighting. You can set your frame here. I did it with, the width being the width of the screen, which is the UI screen.main.bounds.width. And the height is going to be your bounds dot height divided by 2. So these are things you can just play around with, see what looks good on your screen, that kind of thing. So you just have to experiment and kind of dial it in, right? Then we have our robot name and robot description. So your detail view is pretty straightforward, right? And then we have our button style, which is it's a custom black button that you can see here. Which, here we go on the bottom. It's basically it's a black button of button style, and again, you can play around with this too, saying what kind of clip shape you want, foreground, background, padding. These are kind of things you just gotta playing around with until you get something that works for your app, right? So that is the detail view. The last thing on here you can see is the log out button, which is on the top right there, part of the toolbar. What that does, again, it goes back to authentication.update validation, which by hitting it now, boom, we go back to the first screen, the login screen, because in our app file, it's telling us it was toggled. So now we're going to go back to the login view. So yeah, there you go. It's not, again, nothing overly complicated. There's some kind of good functionality here. Sometimes I had another app where you actually had to hit, do an API call, hit an endpoint, things like that. But, kind of like this is kind of just some good basic functionality with Swift UI and things you may get asked to do on a take home. So anyway, that is that. Hope that was entertaining, and yeah, so hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you out there, in iOS land, hopefully. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.